Good afternoon, and welcome to the night webinar of the UST Department of History. But before anything else, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Associate Professor Dr. Augusto V. De Viana. Now let us have the invocation led by the UST chorale, followed by the singing of the national anthem.
Signore, mi rendere uno strumento della vostra pace.
Lord, make me an instrument of your peace.
Dove ci è odio, lascialo seminare di amore.
Where there is hatred, let me sow love.
Dove ci è ferita, perdona. Dove ci è dubbio, fede. Dove ci è spersone,
Where there is despair,
sperare. Dove ci è
where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy.
Divine Master, grant that I may not so much sin, to be consoled as to console.
To be understood as to understand.
To be loved as to love.
As to love.
For it is in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned. It is in dying that we
At this point, to formally open this webinar, let me call on the chairperson of the Department of History, Dr. Archie B. Resos.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Mapagpalayang hapon po sa bawat isa sa atin. Isa sa pinakamahalagang kurso na tinatalakay sa pag-aaral ng kasaysayan ay ang History of Mindanao and Indigenous People. Dito pinag-aaralan ang kultura, tradisyon at kasaysayan ng mga mamamayan ng Mindanao, lalo na ang paghubog ng kamalayan at impluwensya ng pananampalatayang Islam sa Pilipinas. Mahalagang pag-aralan ang pananampalatayang Islam sapagkat ito ang pinakamalaking relihiyon sa buong mundo at nakakasakop sa maraming bansa, kaharian at sultanado na pinahahalagahan ng maraming tao. Ito ay paraan din upang mapag-isa ang magkaibang pananampalataya ng Kristyanismo at Islam sa higit na mahalagang katuruan ng pag-ibig at pagkakaunawaan. Walang puwang sa isang bansang dapat magkaisa katulad ng Pilipinas, ang hidwaan at kawalan ng kaalaman sa pagkakaiba ng pananampalataya, lalo na ang ating bayan ay pinaghihiwalay ng libu-libong pulo at ng iba't ibang uri ng pananalita. Ito ay magandang pagkakataon na makilala natin ang isa sa pinakamahalagang katutubong Pilipino sa Hilagang Mindanao, ang mga Meranaw o ang mga tao ng lawa. Sa isang akademikong pananaw ay bibigyan tayo ng kaunawaan ni Dr. Labi Riwarong, Professor ng Mindanao State University, ukol sa tradisyon at kultura ng isa sa pinakamahalagang kapatid natin sa Mindanao, ang mga Meranaw. Isang malaking kagalakan sa Departamento ng Kasaysayan ng Pamantasan ng Santo Tomas, isang katolikong universidad na maging daluyan ng lahat ng mga pag-aaral na ito tungkol sa kasaysayan ng Mindanao at ang kaunawaan sa mga kapwa nating Pilipinong mga Meranaw. Nawa ay patuloy na manatili ang karunungan, kaalaman, at higit na pagkakaunawaan sa pagitan ng mga Kristiyano at Muslim sa mga diskursong akademiko na katulad nito. Muli mapagpalang hapon po sa bawat isa.
Thank you very much, Dr. Resos, for your inspiring remarks. Today, we are fortunate to have a resource person who will discuss the culture and traditions of the Meranaw people. It is my honor to introduce to you our speaker, Professor Dr. Labi Haji Sarip Riwarong, PhD. Professor Riwarong is a PhD in Philippine Studies from the Mindanao State University in Meranaw City. Her dissertation was entitled Meranaw Heroism in the Folk Tradition of Darangen E. Di Makaling. Professor Riwarong is a BSBA Economics graduate of the Meranaw State University in 1997. She finished her Master of Arts in Anthropology major in Applied Research in the University of San Carlos in Cebu City. With a grant from the leadership of the United Church Board of World Ministries in New York, supplemented by grants from the Development Aid Committee of the Evangelical Church of Germany through the Evangelical Central Agency, she made her thesis a profile of economic activities of Meranaw women in Malundo, Marantau, and the Islamic city of Marawi. This was presented in Mindanao Sulu Culture Seminar and published in Dansalan Quarterly in 1985. Dr. Riwarong is the chairman of the Folklore Division of the Mamitwa Saber Research Center, Mindanao State University, Marawi City. She is a researcher, linguist, and a lover of Meranaw culture. She is one of the few who knows to read the Kirim, the alphabet used in the writing of the Darangen. Hence, she presented her research both in national and international conferences. As a researcher, Dr. Riwarong has been a collaborative research fellow in the Institute in the Sophia University, Japan, in October 2007 and April 2011 for the implementation of her research project, Islamic Cultural Heritage in Southeast Asia, including the Philippines. An overseas research collaborator, she has participated in the following research projects, which are initiated by Professor Midori Kawashima. This included grants in aid, for the promotion of science, entitled The Study of Islamic Publications and Oral Literature in Meranaw Language as Source Material in Islamic Thought and Movements in the Philippines. From the Toyota Foundation, Preservation and Compilation of Islamic Manuscripts in Mindanao. Again, from Research for the Japan Site in Promotion of Science, Comparative Studies of Islamic Manuscripts and Books in the Philippines. She has many other contributions to various publications, among which would be the Library of an Islamic Scholar in Mindanao, the collection of Sheikh Muhammad Said bin Imam sa bayan sa Al-Imam Al-Sadiq Library in Marawi City, and various local materials on the Meranaw and Meranaw manuscripts. And also, as a linguist, he's a member of the MSU Meranaw Ortografía, a collaborative project of the MSU and the Komisyon sa Wikang Filipino, standardizing the Meranaw language. Professor Iwaro is a research collaborator and language translator to Professor William Jason Lobel of the University of Hawaii in Manoa, and the collaboration resulted in the publication of 2 articles in the Oceanic Linguistic of the said university. These were the Meranaw Revisited, Overlooked Consonants, Contrasts, and its Implications for Lexicography and Grammar, which was published in December 2009, and Meranaw, Preliminary Phonological Sketch with supporting audio, language documentation and conservation, which was published in Tokyo in 2019. As a lover of Meranaw culture, she has undertaken various researches in oral Meranaw literature and presented both in national and international conferences. Among these would be the Darangen, the Epic of the Meranaw, which was presented in the 35th National Conference of the on Local National History, and Dimakaling, the Hero or Outlaw in Meranaw, Darangen, which was published in the Sophia University of Asian Studies. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor, my colleague in the Committee of the Historical Research in the National Historical Commission, National Commission Culture and Arts, Professor Dr. Labi Sarip Riwaring, PhD.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Greetings of peace to everyone. The topic that I am going to present is about the Darangen, a showcase of the traditional and cultural traditions of the Meranaw. The Meranaw have their own version of their origin. It is recounted as a mixture of genealogy and folklore. The earliest Meranaw historical events are found in the Salsila, the written nobility genealogy larded with significant events that serves to authenticate the title to Adato's eligibility as a sultan. This is an example of a salsila written in a kalokop or a bamboo shoot and being kept in a bamboo tube called tentang in Meranaw language. This is also another example of a salsila that is covered with skinship and then covered again with a net. The term Meranaw with pipit vowel E refers to the people inhabiting the Lake Lanao area. It is derived from the word Mera, meaning peacock, and Ranao, which means lake. Their location gives them their name, which connotes residing near the lake, that is around Lake Lanao, the next largest lake to the Manila Bay. The colorful feathers of the peacock are compared to the colorful culture of the Meranaw. The Meranaw have preserved much of their literary cultural heritage, one of which is their noble epic called the Darangen. It is compared to the Iliad and Odyssey of the Greeks, and the Ramayana and Mahabharata of India in terms of length and complexity. Meanwhile, Manuel Tawagon in his article about the Pangampong divided the history of the Meranaw into 4 periods. The first period is the Indarapatra period, which talks about the peopling of Lanao. And the second period is the Darangen period, which is the origin of the mythological civilization called the Bambaran, the setting of the Darangen epic. When Bambaran was petrified, it gives rise to the Pangampong Kuranao, which means the Pangampong Kuranao, which means the for encampment of the lake. And the fourth period is the Islamization period, or the coming of Islam in the Philippines. This is the picture of the Lake Lanao, the second largest lake in the Philippines, where the Meranaw lived around this area, this Lake Lanao. And this is the map of the Pangampong Saranao, or the 4 encampment of Lake of Lanao. Now let's go to the proper topic of my lecture, which is the Darangen. The Darangen is an indigenous and pre-Islamic, thus remain largely an oral tradition. It is transferred by word of mouth, not until the coming of Islam to Lanao in the first quarter of the 16th century, when the Arabic alphabet was introduced. Thus the Meranaw started writing down the Darangen. The written Darangen are considered by the owner as a family heirlooms and passed down from one generation to the next. At first, important episodes were written in scrolls using locally made paper. But when the Americans arrived in the Lanao area, the Darangen were written in thick notebook and are strictly guarded by the owner and family. And one can easily borrow a large amount of money or an expensive gold, but not the Darangen or the Salsila. This is an example of a scroll showing the hair of the locally manufactured paper. The collection of Guru Samasio, Taraca, Lanao del Sur. For the Darangen, the owner usually have 2 copies. The authentic one which are intended for the exclusive use of the family, and the ordinary one that is intended for lending. Thus they stored it in a chest called caban, so that the manuscript cannot be easily accessed by an individual outside of the family member. This is an example of a caban or chest where the manuscripts are being kept. The Darangen, as described by Osopay Kadar, has romantic elements of which the scale of its action knows no boundaries. The Darangen has silent features. It is a dignified poetry, a classical literature that has the energy of passion, intensity of feelings, and loftiness of thoughts. It is a metrical romance because its theme is lively and lofty and reflects passion of love. It is indigenous and pre-Islamic. It is a popular epic, a literary masterpiece. Thus, on November 25, 2005, the UNESCO proclaimed the Darangen as one of the masterpieces of the oral heritage of humanity. The Lanao del Sur Sangguniang Panlalawigan also declares Darangen as the classical epic of the Meranaw. Here is the copy of the Sangguniang Panlalawigan resolution for the Darangen. The Darangen is about the heroic exploits of Prince Bantugan, one of the principal characters who conquered lands on many seas and won the love of reigning princess in faraway kingdom. It has many chapters. Each chapter is a literary masterpiece. The Darangen is very important to the Meranaw because it contains a body of tradition which has functions in the past and still functions in the present as a foundation that stabilizes Meranaw society. Even through turmoil that it had undergone in its history, it serves as the rock foundation of the Meranaw culture. It is a tale, almost an endless tale. Kayongkat describes the Darangen as it takes the readers through fantastic and adventures and marvelous exploits with resonant line, opening up vistas to remote epochs of long vanished world. Prince Bantugan, the apotheosis of virility, masculine beauty and heroic attributes, holds the center stage as focal point lengths the various parts of this loose collection. Further, he said that the Darangen has beauty and grace. It has charm and spell when it is sung. Its rhythm and melody glides from one to another until everybody in the audience is cheerful. The Darangen is important to the Meranaw because it serves as the rock foundation of the Meranaw culture. Darangen din is the only written literature aside from few folk literary pieces that mirror the values, customs, and behavior of the Meranaw. The epic showcases the culture of the Meranaw. It deals with how to be an ideal leader, ideal princess, the role played by the youth, the women, and the elders, the relationship between the leader and his follower, The Darangen has literary treasure. The Darangen has literary treasure in it, which are merely an ingredients of oral tradition handed down from generation to generation. Having a copy of the Darangen. Having a copy of the Darangen is a treasure, an heirloom, and a pride of the family, because it shows that you are a bilangataw or well-mannered. Though there are already published materials about the Darangen, still it is very hard to borrow a copy of the original old copy. That is because the owners believe that as time goes, the language as spoken orally evolves and changes, thus losing its originality and authenticity. That is why they want to keep the written old copy of it. Hence, borrowing a copy of the original involves a lot of negotiation. One can easily borrow money than a good Darangen. That is how the Meranaw value their Darangen manuscript. Francisco said that the Darangen, at least before the Quran was introduced as the foundation of a new faith, was the primary source of wisdom, an article of faith which validated all actions of the society. It still functions as a social control and at the same time a record of all that is to be emulated, which is the height of emulation, and the Meranaws call it Anonan Arawatan and Andang Samona, or the record of the ways of the ancestors. This idea is upheld by Kayongkat Ate, who said that the Darangen is enshrined in the culture of the Meranaw. Its impact on the Meranaw is tremendous, when their way of life is made rather ostentatious. They have inclination to do things in garish fashion, as brought about by the Darangen to them. Thus, the epic has not been defiled by the influx of foreign influences. As to the writing and language of the Darangen, in the olden times when technology was not yet developed among the Meranaws, Darangen was an oral literature that was handed down from one generation to the next. The Darangen is rendered in classical Meranaw language in several different ways. The best is the authentic one with the kaermasan or literary embellishments, because it is composed in poetic classical Meranaw that only very few understand fully as to its meaning. When Islam was introduced in Mindanao in the first quarter of the 16th century, the Meranaw learned the Arabic way of writing. Thus, they started writing the Darangen in scrolls. Meranaw uses the Batanga Arab, or the Arabic alphabet, in writing the Darangen. This style of writing is called kirim, with no punctuation marks or even space between words. Since it uses the Arabic alphabet, the way of writing is the same. That is, the writer starts from the right side of the paper, which is the opposite of the English writing that is started from the left side of the notebook. Further, because the language is classical Meranaw, there are words which are not in the Arabic alphabet, of which the Meranaw Kirim writing have, like for example, the word nga. They used Arabic letter, the kaf added one dot at the top of the letter instead of only two. We have also the pipit vowel sound, words like ph, th. They added letter I, a below the letter ka and ga. Have also, if it is p and so on with the other letter. Copies of Darangen written in Kirim are kept by individual who owns it before the Marawi States. The Gawing Memorial Research Center of the Densalan College Foundation, Marawi City, used to have copies of the Darangen written in Kirim, but these copies were lost during the siege. This is an example of the Darangen written in its Kirim writing. When the Americans arrived, they started writing the Darangen in thick notebook. During this period, the Darangen began to be written in the Roman script by foreigners who got interested in collecting episodes of the epic and translated them to the English language. As Kader says, Darangen writing has no punctuation marks, even a comma, and the sentence is continuous. Thus, it is the prerogative of the reader when she would stop when reading and or singing the Darangen. The stanzas are in free form, organized according to thought contents, instead of a strict number of lines. Therefore, the pattern of rhyme and the number of syllables in a line together with the logic of thought content in the stanzas makes the long episodes easy to remember and impossible to be tampered. Now let's proceed to the several ways of chanting or rendering the Darangen. By the way, this is the transcribed and translated Darangen published by the Mamitwa Saber Research Center, MSU Marawi City. Now the different ways of chanting the Darangen. The first way is that the Darangen is a Meranaw folk song composed in classical Meranaw language. It is sung during important occasions such as weddings, enthronement of Meranaw or of Meranaw traditional social titles, kalilang or festivity, and other forms of social gatherings for entertainment. It is sung by a Meranaw male or female called honor, who is an expert in the musical rendition of this oral literature. An honor who specializes in singing the Darangen is called Darangen. An adjectival form of the word Darangen, and the act of singing is called Darangen. The hired honor would sing the Darangen that was appropriate for the occasions. For example, if the occasion were an enthronement, The owner would sing the Paganay Kian Dato Diwatandaw Gibbon, or the first strain of Diwatandaw Gibbon, or the Darangen about Alungam Pisayanan, son of the Darangen hero Bantugan from Princess Gandingan. When he was crowned as the king of Bugabong Akomara, if it were a wedding, the owner would sing the Kaplumna, the son of Prince Bantugan from Princess Lawanan, who is asked by the Ayunan of Bambaran, king of Bambaran, to go to Minirigiarugong for the marriage proposal of his father, Prince Bantugan, to the princess in that place. Dr. Supay Kadar, who studied Darangan, established the epic's poetic meter to be iambic tetrameter or catalectic tetrameter. The Darangan is rendered in the classical Meranaw language in several different ways. One way of rendering the Darangan is to sing after the owner has first rendered a bayok. It serves an additional entertainment for the audience. The owner renders it while sitting on the chair with a rhythmically fast accompaniment by the tintik or a beaten metal used to accompany the singing of the Darangan. The other way is called kaganat sa Darangan. Accompanied by a rhythmic work called kinikini. In this kind of singing, the performer attempts to interpret and act out as in dance the manner of some characters in the epic, such as Princess Minoyod, one of Prince Bantugan's sweethearts, who was abducted by Misuyaw, the opponent of the epic hero, Prince Bantugan, and rescued by her sweetheart, Prince Bantugan. Another way is the kaganat sa Darangan, but with the accompaniment of the kulintang. Hence, the audience gets a triple treat. There is the playing of the kulintang, the singing of the Darangan, and the dancing of the singkel, or the Meranaw dance. In this manner, the owner tries to interpret and act out as in dance and in playing the kulintang, the manners of the character of Princess Gandingan, one of Bantugan's wife, who plays the kulintang in the turugan as requested by the datos of Bambaran as their way of testing, evaluating her if she really belongs to the royalty, or it is the way of the Ayunan sa Bambaran pasandala namurog to find the identity of Princess Gandingan. This form requires a very talented performer because it requires someone who can perform the intricate steps with ease, poise, and fineness. The performer must have a beautiful and supple body because all movements are calculated. She must work in a graceful manner while she sways her hips and places her finger and perfectly while holding the fan. I am sorry that I was not able to get a picture of that type of Darangan performance. Another way is the singing of the Darangan with the kulintang and the Sagayan war dance. In this manner, they are trying to act out with when Alungam Pisayanan, one of the son of Bantugans, had an encounter with the enemy of the Bambaran, the people of Kadaraan. They are engaged in fight, and they call it Kia Ilidadampas. The other way of rendering the darangan is singing it with the accompaniment of the guitar. And still the other way of rendering the darangan is the so-called kandumana, or relating the darangan with a poetic rhythm. It is like storytelling, but it is highly specialized in using jargon seldom heard in daily language. Thus, it is a form of elevated storytelling. There is still another way of rendering the darangan, that is by merely reading the kirim in a rhythmic voice. This is an informal way of rendering the darangan because the audience are usually composed of members of the household. It is usually held at night or in the daytime as a pastime for the family and friends, especially the women. Women and friends gather in the house and ask somebody to read the episode, and everybody listens to it. The performer is usually one who has a melodious voice, although occasion is not formal. Still, the art of singing is still required in this case. To finish one episode of the Darangan requires a series of evening sessions. When there are sentimental values, the audience even goes to the extent of crying. But when the hero wins in the battle, they always applaud him. According to the old folks, the first singer of the Darangan was Amay Sotra, who because of his melodious voice was brought by the tonongs to the langit or the sky world, so he could sing always for them. The fishermen before sailing near the forest in Pagadian could still hear the melodious voice at night. I don't know if this still exists, but before they can really hear the voice. What are the values and uses of the darangan? Dr. Saber mentions the many uses of the darangan. For lovers of literature, the darangan exhibits a sustained beauty and dignity. The epic plays an important role in the moral and intellectual life of the Meranaw. It teaches moral lesson. It also brings out the ideals and the ideology of this epic. Hence, the darangan provides an important clue that leads to the understanding of Meranaw behavior, for they are crystallization or symbolic representations of the underlying imagery and ideology of Meranaw society. As mentioned earlier, the epic Darangan was composed in classical Meranaw language and set as a long narrative poem, composed in didactic verses, descriptive poetry, lyric poetry, and sayings and proverbs, and even some humorous verses. The epic then serves as a common source of Meranaw singers, poets, bands, orators, politicians, leaders, and all types of people in the creative arts. The epic contains many musical terms that have become a source material for musical terminology. It is full of stock materials for the singers. Since communication of both men and women plays a significant role in Meranaw society, the Darangen gives us information about the different speeches regarding conflict resolution between people, sex, and countries. Dr. Peter Kenneth, an SVD, an European folklorist who lives and works in Japan, has done a review of the Darangen in 1989 and remarked that with the use of the Darangen, the background of the Meranaw's identity in the stories can be traced. The etiquette proper to the Meranaw royal family and the pre-Islamic view of the supernatural of the Meranaw Filipino can be seen in the epic. It offers a great deal of precious information which otherwise cannot be obtained in ordinary source. And because we are running out of time, I will just go directly to the conclusions. Based on the data it presents, the Meranaw epic called the Darangen mirror the Meranaw social traditional values, pertaining especially to proper personal and social attitude and behavior for both the ruler or king and the subject or the people. For his part, the king is advised to treat his people well and see to it that they follow all their customs and traditions. He is responsible for the welfare of his people and his kingdom, since he is the final authority and figurehead. However, he should consult with all the datos under his sovereignty before making a socially applied decision. He is advised to be kind to his people and not make them obey by force. Otherwise, he will lose their respect and run away from him. And what use is a king without his followers? Other rules of kingship include: when you hear people quarreling, settle their differences immediately and don't wait others to mediate between them, because you are the one to settle conflicts, not others. If it is a question of wealth, share your wealth with them. You must not allow time or bad weather to keep you away from helping your people. A good leader goes immediately to settle the troubles of his people, because this is the meaning of the real sign of good relationship. With the king's proper behavior, the subjects will respond with love, undying loyalty, and readiness to die for their king and country. The Darangen also demonstrated how Meranaws should handle maratabat. The Meranaw women are to be adored and treated with special care and attention because they carry the dignity of the family and the kingdom. The children must be raised properly and encouraged to love their country, clan, relatives, and protect the lives and properties of the kingdom. Thank you. More power. Keep safe always, and God bless us all. That ends my lecture.
Maraming salamat, Dr. Labi Riwarong, sa napakalawak na kaalaman na hatid ng inyong pagpapaliwanag. Sa lahat ng karunungang hatid ninyo, lalong lumago ang aming pananaw sa kasaysayan ng Mindanao, lalo na ang mga lokal na naninirahan doon, kasama ang ating mga kapatid na Meranaw. Tunay na magdudulot ng lalong hatid na kapayapaan ang inyong dalang pagpapaliwanag sa mga tradisyon at kultura ng mga kapwa Pilipino nating mga Meranaw. Isa pong taos-pusong pasasalamat. Magandang hapon po sa bawat isa.
Carved from the mighty rock of faith, shaped by traditions of old, steered by God's guiding hands towards farther shores of our dreams. Fitful vessel on the high seas, searching undaunted and free. Sunlit decks ring with voices resounding in one hymn of praise. Life, love, and Lord reigning full, tempered by His gentle hand.